All right, in this video, we are looking at Unit 11, and we're going to review the different types of questions that you are going to see on the quadratic graphs test. So the first type of question that you're going to see is a question asking you whether something is in standard form, vertex form, or factored form. So our standard form equation is going to be y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. We call this standard form. So question 1 is in standard form, SF for standard form. Vertex form is when we have an equation that looks like y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. So this form is good for telling us what the vertex is. We can also identify the maximum or minimum from this, but it's not very good at telling us about the x-intercepts. So we call this vertex form. And question 3 is an example of vertex form. Lastly, we have factored form, which is when we've factored it into its two parts. And those allow us to be able to quickly find the x-intercepts. We can also find the y-intercepts, but it's not as easy to find the vertex or determine whether it's a maximum or minimum. So question 2 and question 4 are in factored form. Okay. The next section is asking us to find the vertex, axis of symmetry, concavity, and determine if it has a maximum or a minimum, and then draw the axis of symmetry. So this first question here, I can see that it's in vertex form. So that is a good form for being able to quickly identify these things without spending a lot of time. And you won't need to do any calculations for this question because it's in vertex form. So our first question here is, what is the vertex? So our vertex is always HK. And over here, when we wrote the vertex, we said that H is the number in the parentheses and K is the number after the parentheses. So here I'm looking at these two values. Now, when we work with the vertex, if it's in parentheses, we're going to change the sign. So this is going to be -4, +2, but we do not need to change the sign on the 2 because that number is not in parentheses in the equation. Okay. Our axis of symmetry is always an equation, and it's always going to be h. So x equals h or -4. Concavity is always an up or down question. And for both concavity and maximum minimum, I am going to look right here. So I'm going to do this in blue. Is always the front where a is on this equation. And in this case, a is negative. So with this, if a is positive, when positive things are happening to us, we like to smile. And when negative things are happening to us, we like to frown. So since a is negative in our problem, that tells me that my graph looks like this. And when my graph has a high point, we call that a maximum concave down. All right, our next question is asking us to identify the vertex and state whether it's a maximum or a minimum, and these are also in vertex form. So finding the vertex is the same as before. We're going to look at this 3 for our maximum minimum, and then the 4 and the 9 is going to make our vertex. So I would say our vertex is at -4, -9. And because 3 is positive, that's going to be a graph that looks like this, which has a minimum concave up. All right, our next question is to change the following quadratic from standard form to a vertex form. So in order to do this, we need to take our standard form, which tells me that A is 2, B is 4, and C is 1. And we need to change this and figure out what H and K are to put it into vertex form like we have over here. So our formula to find h is to take negative b all over 2 times a. So for problem 9, we said b is 4. So I'd say h equals negative 4 all over 2 times negative 2. We simplify that, we can simplify that in our head or with a calculator, but it should come out to positive 1. You're going to take that 1 and you're going to plug it into the equation that we were given. So we started with negative 2. Everywhere there's an x, I plug in a 1 instead. You simplify that in a calculator and that gives you k. So in this case, k would be 3. All right, we take those two things and we're going to finally put our answer into vertex form. So we say y equals a, parenthesis, x minus h. So even though h was a positive number, when I put it into the equation, I change the sign, squared, but we never change the sign on k. All right, question 10, 11, and 12 are all doing that same process where you have to find h, find k, and then plug it into factored form. All right, this next one says to change this to vertex form and then to factored form and find the y-intercept and the x-intercept. So we can find the y-intercept without changing forms. Anytime you want to find the y-intercept, you're going to set x equal to 0. So everywhere you see an x, you change it to a 0 in parentheses. When you simplify that in your calculator, you find that y is equal to 30. Okay, the next thing that we want to do is we want to find the x-intercepts. If I'm trying to find an x-intercept from something that is not already factored, you have two ways to do that. You can use quadratic formula, the negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a, or you can factor the problem out and put it into factored form and then solve your factors. If I was factoring number 13, the first thing I would do is pull out the GCF. So I can factor out of 15. That leaves me with x squared minus 3x plus 2. Okay, that tells me a is 1, b is negative 3, c is 2. We set up our factor table. We multiply a times c is 2, and b is negative 3. I need something that multiplies to 2 and adds to negative 3, so I'm going to have two negative numbers, negative 1, negative 2. Now when we write this in factored form, we're going to write the GCF multiplied by x minus 1 and x minus 2. Now this is in factored form, and some of your problems on your test are actually going to give it into you in factored form. So they've done all of this work for you, and your last step is to find the x-intercept. To find the x-intercept, you're going to take each piece that has an x in it and set those equal to 0. So we have x minus 1 equals 0, and x minus 2 equals 0. So now you have two equations that need solved. We solve them by getting x by itself, so we have an answer of x equals 1. And on our second equation, we get x equals 2. All right, so that was all for 13. Remember, if you're given a problem that already looks like this right here, that is factored form. And if you're finding the x-intercept, the only thing you need to do is set each piece equal to 0 and solve for x. All right, the last type of question that you are going to see on your test is a problem like this question number 17 at the bottom. This is asking you to change the equation into standard form. So you'll see questions like 17, and you'll also see questions like 20 that just have a couple less steps. If you have parentheses squared, your first step is to write it in expanded form. Okay. Your second step is to multiply. So in class, we talked about multiplying the 2 into the first two terms like this. There's a couple of other ways to do this correctly, but I like to just go work my way left to right. Because it's set up where all the multiplications on the left, this process is going to work. Now we're going to take this and this first parenthesis and multiply it by the second parenthesis. So I take the 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times 9 is 18x. And now I'm going to take the 18 and multiply it. So 18 times x is 18x. 18 times 9 is 162. That's a positive number, and then we still minus 10 on the end. My last step here is to combine like terms. So these two can be added together, and these two can be added together. So my final answer here is 2x squared plus 36x plus 152. Right, so that is a review of each type of problem that you might see on the test. The only thing that is not on here is the story problems, but the story problems will be asking you to find either h, k, the x-intercept, or the y-intercept, which we have reviewed. If you have any more questions, I can go over those with you in class. This is